Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new video. And today we're back with a different one. Talking about the Super League. A lot of things happening recently if you've been following the news. But today we have Kshitij and Siddharth over to discuss their takes on the Super League as well as some of the pros and cons and generally what we think about the new proposal. Yeah, I mean, you guys want to say hi?
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, guys?
But yeah, I think so. 2 years following the initial proposal of the Super League, following major backlash from the rest of the teams and fans, uh, the management's back with a new name, A22 Sports Management, and the new proposal is essentially very different to the initial idea of having 12 teams break away from the European. Leagues. Now it's essentially 60 to 80 teams in a multi-division league, and they're proposing that the qualification to the Super League would be via the domestic leagues, and they will have a relegation and promotion kind of structure to their multi-division league. And I think that's basically summarizes it. What do you guys think? What were your first reactions when you saw this in the news?
Sid, you can go first, man. Yeah.
I think reaction-wise, now that they've come with a more structured approach, like the problem was, I think first you have to look at why what all the fans, everyone was against it initially. You have to look at what that was. It was two things. Mainly, it was a closed league, so it was only the big teams. That was the thing. So everyone goes in, they make the money. What happens? You affect the football pyramid in the UK. You have like grassroots teams that are still sponsored by the bigger clubs. The money flows through that pyramid. You don't have that if teams go into a closed league. That's number one. Number two, it was the fact that there wouldn't be any promotion or relegation, any qualification. Imagine Chelsea being always in the Super League or always in the Champions League, even when they're performing bad. What's the reward when you play good a whole season, 38 games, you finish top four? That's a reward. You get to play in the Champions League. But what happens when even if you play bad like they're playing now, they don't deserve Champions League. So imagine now that they have to play Champions League after this bad of a season. That's what fans were against. Those two things, killing off the pyramid and killing off the competition just to have your close league. But that's changed now. So that's come into a totally new aspect where you do have a pyramid, and the pyramid's even larger. Even for the teams in the lower leagues, they'll have a chance to go in. So that's even a better thing. You'll have multi divisions. That makes it more exciting. Imagine a team that's just come into the Premier League, they would have a chance. A team that's in the Championship could have a chance. That's crazy to just think about. So that tackles the first thing that we're rejecting. And the second thing was competition, to have relegation and promotion within that Super League itself. That makes it exciting. It replaces so many things that the Champions League and the Europa League do not have. It brings a new aspect to it. So, in my opinion, I think it's a much better development. I still think they're going to have to go like one or two more refinements of it to get it perfect, a structure that we can accept, a structure that's exciting. But for now, I think the fans that were against it, like me, I was completely against it. At least now I have a more accepting mindset towards it, a more understanding of it, and it might be accepted in like 1 or 2 years' time, hopefully. Shitij, what do you think?
Yeah, no, exactly on that. So, like as soon as this second revision came through, I've seen people going mad on the internet, Sky Sports, people like Rory, you might be knowing him as a Chelsea fan. And I don't know, all these other people, they're going mad. Super League is back, football is this, football is that, how have they come back again? How can we accept this kind of stuff without reading anything that's like gone on, without seeing the actual revision, like what is it? So as you said, the second revision is very, it's very refined and like it's improved a lot from the first one. They brought back meritocracy, and it's a bit more structured now. Obviously, I'm 100% going to agree with you that this they still need to refine a lot of things. It's still very vague. It's still there's still a lot of doubts as to how it's going to work. I think they've given a very basic structure at the moment, but yeah, I think there's pros and cons to it, and that's what we're going to get into. Yeah, Ankur.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main concerns I had was these 12 teams. They're gonna get rich as hell. I mean, I saw there being a real financial divide between these 12 teams. And the rest of the teams in Europe, and of course the fact that no other team would be able to get into the Super League. I think now that the new proposal is with 60 to 80 teams, one of the things is like, even if there's a big financial divide, you still have 60, 80 teams that are part of the Super League, and they're going to be making a lot of money, yes, but that's still a lot of teams to have a big viewership in general, and still kind of contribute to the traditional fans who who are closest to the clubs, live near these clubs, want to have some real rivalries between their traditional rival clubs. So in a way, that's good that they've increased it to have these many teams. But I think the main concern, I mean, also they've I saw that they've spoken to, I think, about 50 teams, and there is a majority approval based on the teams they've spoken to, or at least that's what they claim to say. But I think it comes down to really two things. One is the fact that the Premier League is just doing so well, and they are essentially the Super League of today. And it really comes down to whether the Premier League teams want to join the Super League. Because let's face it, all the other leagues, like, they're dying. Like, La Liga is not what it was 10 years ago. And who even talks about Syria and the other leagues as much as they used to back in the day? So that is one. And the other thing is the ownership, because this is not going to be overseen by the UEFA, by the FIFA as it stands. And what they're claiming is that ownership is going to be based on the member clubs. And this is where the issue comes in, because there's huge financial difference between these member clubs. Like, the big six in the Premier League are just financially worth way more than the rest of the clubs. So the fact that membership is going to be between these clubs, these teams are going to have a bigger say in what happens compared to the rest of the teams, and that would end up kind of changing. I mean, making decisions that aids more towards the bigger teams. It's kind of reminds me of what BCCI is doing with cricket
Yeah.
and ICC, and they have a majority say in whatever happens in cricket. But yeah, I think maybe we can dig down into some of the pros and cons and analyze them further.
Yeah. I think firstly, I think one of the biggest pros is the fact that the UCL, in my opinion, is just redundant at this point, because you have group stages. Fine, you get excited for the group stage draw, but then you have maybe one group out of all those, I don't know how many, eight groups that you're super excited about. Only one of them is actually going to provide you with two good games out of all the games that are happening every single week. Whereas in a Super League format, you can have just maybe in the group stage phase or in the round robin phase that they're planning to have, you could have 7, 8 games that you're actually excited about. And that's just in one game week or in 2 game weeks, you can be excited about all the big teams playing each other. Whereas for UCL, you're waiting all the way until quarterfinals, semifinals to have like the really good games that you're excited for. Like now, round of 16, we have one game that we're excited for, but you have teams like Frankfurt in there, you have teams like Benfica in there. You're like, yeah, fine, it's exciting. What about in group stage when those same teams were playing, when Frankfurt and Benfica were playing? You were not excited about those matches. Those are not the ones that the whole global population is looking, like the footballing fans are looking forward to. They're looking forward to PSG and Real Madrid playing if they're in the same group. They're seeing Manchester City and maybe another big team struggling to get out of group stage. Something like that is what's exciting. Those big games at an earlier stage rather than waiting all the way towards the end of the season to see two of those games when you could have so many more of those games. You even know the viewership skyrockets at quarterfinals, semifinals. What if it was similar earlier on and even greater in like semifinal, quarterfinal stage? I think that's something that Super League brings. But also, second, you mentioned it, Ankur, it's the finances and the fans. These are two things that I think are the biggest pros. So finance wise, you're going to have more control. As you said, like ownership would be with the clubs, so you have more control over the finances because a lot of the money is going to is going to UEFA. Even the ticketing prices, everything that's going through them, the club does get some of it, but most of it goes through UEFA. So they get so much control over everything that it's more of a monopoly. And then they bring in their own restrictions and they can impose sanctions on clubs based on what they have found out. But is that really fair? Like when Chelsea got the sanction for 2 seasons, it when it went to CAS, which is the court of arbitrarization, they said that it's only meant to be a one season ban. Why 2 season transfer ban? So it doesn't make sense. They impose stricter regulations and stuff like that. So what my point is that UEFA built their own monopoly, but there's no need for that. When you have the finances spreading through to the clubs directly, you have more finances available within the club for transfers, for spending on fan experiences, for spending on youth teams. You'll have better quality of football when the money is going directly to them. So yes, it is about the money, 100%. and it's fine that it's like that because UEFA have that much control over it. But the second thing, and for me, what's the most important thing, is the fan experience. You have all of the Champions League finals in the last 5 years. You have attendance of 60,000 fans. Imagine out of that, only 16,000 fans are allocated to each team. So a stadium that has a capacity of 60,000 fans, you have only 30,000 that are actually fans from both the teams. Each team gets 15,000, 16,000. What's the point? I'm a fan. If I want to go to the game, but only 16,000 fans can, what's the point? Whereas in Wembley, for like the FA Cup final, you can have 45,000 fans each. Each team gets 36,000 tickets. That's more worth it than going for UCL final, which is probably the most important game in Europe. You can only send 16,000 fans for it. It doesn't make sense. When you have teams in charge of it, they have more access to those tickets. They have more of a better fan experience every single game when it goes on. You have UEFA only allowing a certain number of fans to go abroad and watch a game. For example, like the Dortmund game that I wanted to go to in Dortmund, you can only have 3,500 fans going. Imagine if that was even extended to 6,000, 7,000. Better fan atmosphere for away supporters and home supporters because you have this atmosphere within the stadium, whereas someone's not constantly controlling it based on their profit margins or whatever they want to control. So those are two things that I think will be the pros if we have the Super League.
Yeah, I think like I agree with most of the stuff you said as well, but like there's just some things like I would like to point out, like the thing, for example, like you were saying, like the bigger games, we want to watch the bigger games and all that, and I agree with you totally. Like we all want to watch the bigger games, but there's this something special, like because the way, at least for now, okay, that game goes to a point where it's like very vague right now, and they need to revise it more. But as of now, they're saying there'll be 14 teams in the top division, right?
Yeah.
Now, my issue with that is that currently, I think in the Champions League we have like 32 teams starting out, right, in the group stages.
Yeah.
That gives the chance to teams like Lyon, who went to the semi-finals recently, to teams like Spurs, who are shit, but like they can reach the final sometimes, to teams like Ajax. Ajax, like they came from like yes, Ajax are European giants like historically, but let's be honest, recently they can't compete with teams like City, PSG, Liverpool, and all these other big teams. But they reached the semi-finals with Eric Ten Hag, and that gave a chance like for us to see managers like Ten Hag come do it big, and now he's at United, and we're like, okay, as a United fan, I can say like so far so good. I'm happy with that. But like if that wasn't there, we wouldn't see those managers, we wouldn't see those players like Frankie De Jong, Matthias De Ligt, them coming out through those teams, and even the Lyon players and the Lyon team. Like we won't be able to see all of that if it's like just 14 teams. So that's my only thing, and I agree that like we want to see the bigger games, but sometimes like just for the like meritocracy, for the spirit of the game, we need to have like these other teams as well in the game, because like they've also qualified by coming by top 2 or top 4 in their leagues. So that's just something I wanted to point out in that. But in terms of finances, you're absolutely right. I think UEFA, they control too much, and they literally make so much money out of it. And I think like as much as the clubs also get a lot of money, but I think UEFA earn way more than that. And that's like the main reason for the Super League, like the birth of the Super League, because like clubs like Madrid, Barca, they're in the mud right now. They're in like debt, and they're like Barca especially, they're like literally, it's like I think more than 1 billion debt or something. So they need like this kind of something like this to help them out of this situation. Juventus in the mud right now. So yeah, I agree with you. And also like for the lower teams, like teams in the lower divisions, like say like the Europa and the conference teams right now, I think if it's like a Super League is there and there's no UEFA in between, I think for the entire pyramid, like the European football pyramid, you can say, I think it's beneficial for everyone, because the finances could be split in a better way. And even the smaller teams from the other European leagues, the smaller European leagues, like the Bulgarian leagues, the Ukrainian leagues, and all these the other leagues, the Swiss leagues, they also will get more money, which they can use to develop their teams in their leagues, and it's also promotion for their leagues, the smaller leagues as well in Europe. And like it's good for all of European football. But again, like I think it needs a lot of revision, but overall in terms of finances, it makes total sense in my opinion as well.
Fair. I think the way that when we're comparing it to the Champions League, right, the way the Champions League is designed, it was designed, say, when football was primarily for those fans who are going to home and away games, those who are closest to the teams, closest to the stadiums, and those hardcore fans, even if they're international. But now we're in the age of the internet, globalization. We have a billion people watching the World Cup final. I mean, how many people watch the World Cup final and have never watched a football game before, right? And I think that
Yeah.
is what A22 Sports Management, or whatever they call themselves, is trying to capitalize on. Because think about a game between City and Chelsea being the Champions League final. How many casual fans are going to tune into this game? And that is what they're trying to capitalize on, having more of these big games. Like you mentioned, Ajax reaching the semifinals. We as football fans, hardcore football fans, love to see that, love to see a Ten Hag come from Ajax and give City a good fight. But when the casual fans don't care about that, let's be honest. And as they try to increase the reach of football, have games around the world, as some people claim that they may have some of these European games being hosted in New York or in Thailand. We need to acknowledge the fact that the viewership has drastically increased around the world for European football. I think it was the Premier League coming out and saying that 50% of the fan base is actually in Asia, in countries like India, Thailand, Indonesia. And there is a lot of money to be made there. There is a lot of commercialization, a lot of ads that can be driven if football goes to these countries, and that is what these guys are trying to benefit on. Increase the amount of revenue and also increase the amount, the growth of the user base as it is. And this, the reason why, say, you have your pundits that are against this is, one, because I think it's a knockover effect from the first version of the Super League that was proposed. But another reason is these are the people who are in England going to every home and away game closest to football, and they will be the ones that will be disrupted by all of this, by having games go away from their stadiums, by it becoming more about the ads like the Super Bowl is at the moment. Whereas for us, say, Shitij, we're in North America. If there's a Champions League game happening here tomorrow, we're going to go for it. We're going to love it. We'd rather have that than watch it over a TV screen in Europe at some odd, in the middle of the day at 12. Like, let's face it, like, we're going to put more of our money going to watch these games, and it's just facts. And I think that is what they're mainly trying to capitalize on. And it will, I
Yeah.
think, there are a lot of pros, we've all agreed to this, but it comes to the fact that whether they're gonna, they say that that is their goal right now, but given that the control is going to be with these big clubs, is it going to stay that way, or is it going to change to become more about the money over time, like not really care about the teams outside the top division of 14 teams? So it's really hard to guess how it's going to go if it ever gets approved. But I can see why this could be great for football, could be the next iteration of football becoming a bigger sport than it already is.
Yeah, there's just one thing. There's one thing. Sorry, like I just want to say that, like, I agree with you, like that. Like it goes all around the world, and if it comes to North America tomorrow, like I'd love to go watch it. Let's say, okay, hypothetically, if United reach the finals of the Champions League and they come to, let's say, the actually not finals, because finals are always in a neutral position, so that's the wrong example, let's say. But the finals can still take place in North America, to be honest. Like, I think if it technically it's possible, but I think like, let's say if it's like the
Quarterfinals.
semifinals, yeah,
Yeah.
semifinals, yeah, and if it's, say, United is in the Champions League semifinals, man, if I'm being honest, yeah, I want one of those legs to be at Old Trafford. I don't care,
Yeah.
because the Old Trafford, the fans at Old Trafford, I agree that there's a large fan base in Asia and everything, and
Yeah.
in North America, in Africa, like all around the world, but the feeling of, like, the Old Trafford fan base, the feeling of playing at
It's
Old
different.
Trafford,
Yeah.
I don't think I've never been to Old Trafford, but just from hearing people talk about, just from viewing it every time on TV, stuff like Old Trafford, and even the same goes for Liverpool at Anfield, and like every team at their home stadium. I think it's just a different vibe, man. It's just like you can't match that at any
You
other
can't beat
place
that.
in the world. It's just the history. It's what we love, and that's kind of, I feel like, what I am attached to Old Trafford without ever going there. Like, can you imagine? How mental is that? I've never seen the place. I've never seen Manchester. I've never seen the place. I've always been far from it. Like, minimum 3 hours is the difference between the time zone between me and the UK all the time. Yeah. Right now it's 5 hours. And I am attached to Old Trafford, man. I love Old Trafford. I call it my home, man. On Facebook, I have it as my home, bro. Or as my workplace. That's my workplace. And one of my Facebook accounts. So I'm just saying, like, like, I feel like that I don't want that to change personally. It's just for me. Maybe there's obviously other
Yeah,
fans. Everyone has their
100%.
opinions, but for me, I don't want that to change, man.
I think if you watch like Club World Cup and all this Super Cup and stuff,
Yeah.
they're always held at neutral locations for UEFA's this global thing that they want to go abroad and do it. Watch all of those games, every single one of those games. None of them have an atmosphere. None of them have fans that are like you have like 6,000 fans chanting the same chant. You never have that.
Yeah.
All you have are like visiting fans. I think for Chelsea, when the Club World Cup tickets went on sale, because it was all the way in Abu Dhabi, and this was like COVID time, where you went and if you got COVID, you had to isolate for like 2 weeks or something. At that time, no fan was ready to spend that amount to go all the way to Abu Dhabi to just watch another friendly. It didn't make sense. It's never going to make sense to take it to different countries. Like you'll go to India, fine. You'll have like maybe 5,000 fans that actually know the chant. What about the other 15,000? They're probably there
Yeah.
just to watch it and post it on their stories. Whereas if you ever come to a game in person, especially a UCL night game, wherever it is, whether it's in Frankfurt, whether it's Benfica, whether it's a Chelsea game, whatever it is, it's that football heritage. It's that UCL 8 p.m. match that's really exciting. So I'm totally against like taking it away across the world.
Yeah.
If you're like all of these pundits, like you said, they're against it because they can't go to it. And 100%, of course, if I'm told to be awake for at 2 p.m. for a match or 2 a.m. for a match that I always watch at 8 p.m., how does that make sense? Like, why should I be part of that? Fine, other countries are doing it because they chose to live there or they're living there. If they want to be close to the football, they come
He
here.
chose to live there, bro. Some of them are born there.
It's not something that you complain about. I think there's no way that taking football, especially these big games around the world, can be a Super League factor that draws clubs in. That 100%, I think every fan would be against. The only people that would be pro for it are the people that are living in places where they can't move from. Like someone from Thailand, they're not going to come to the UK to watch games every 3 months or something like this. It's impossible. But you can't also say that you want the matches to be there because then you're not going to get the same experience. And then the value decreases. That's when people are uninterested. That's when the viewership goes down because that same one time zone that worked for everyone won't work for everyone when it goes to a different time zone. So it's 100 different things. But I think the moving of the game should not happen. That's one thing that I think in a new revision of the Super League will should not be there.
I think, I mean, I think even if they start moving games, I don't see it being like the Formula One where every week is going to be a new destination, right? It's probably going to be like the top 5 games in a year, have it around the world. But like, think about it. If a game goes to a country where European football has never been before, it's going to be a massive event. Like, people who don't watch football are going to know about it, contribute to it in some way or the other. And purely in terms of like revenue, it's going to generate much more money than having it in your traditional stadium. Like, even if like the vibe is not the same, fans might not love it. I agree that like fans might not love it, but I do think like having a one-off game in a new location, like in terms of the finances, it could be big for the league in terms of collection of revenue. And the issue is that at that point, it's not going to be in the fans' hands to decide whether this should happen or not, because ownership is not going to be over a governing body like UEFA. It's going to be over with the clubs to decide, and they are driven by revenue in today's day. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah, I guess like the solution maybe like a potential solution. And okay, I use the semi-final example, but like going back from that, I would say it could be something like say I think it's a league format the way it is right now. So I guess you could say all the league games, like they're all played in Europe, like in their respective stadiums and stuff.
For sure.
And then the knockout games after that, because I think the knockout stages will be much shorter. I think after that, if it's like, for example, if it's 14 clubs, let's just say for now it's 14 clubs, just an example. And then like the knockout stages will just be between like, I don't know, 8 clubs, 4 clubs. I don't think there'd be a round of 16 because there are only 14 teams. So let's say if there's like, say 4 teams, let's say just semi-finals and finals as the knockout stages, right? I feel like maybe just those games, like the 2 semi-finals and the finals, like 3 games, you can have those 3 games in like different countries every year. or every 2 years or whatever. Like the way the World Cup is at a different place every 4 years, like like different countries have to host it. So maybe countries can bid for hosting the knockout stages of the Super League and stuff like that. Maybe that could be a solution, because like the rest of the league is still played in Europe, so people
Yes,
still get
yes.
that experience, and the other fans from around the world get the experience as well. That's something that's now something I can back, like, because every year it'll be at like a different place and it'll be a different experience. Some places might have good atmosphere, some not, just like how it is with the World Cup.
Mhm.
Maybe that's something I could it's
For
a
sure, for
potential
sure.
solution, maybe.
I
Yeah.
mean, sorry to cut you off here. We're going super lengthy on this video, but
Yeah.
we should probably wrap it up in the next few minutes. But I think I agree with that. And there's one big point we've not yet touched on here. I think a lot of people are talking about how the big teams with rosters of like 30 people are going to start prioritizing the Super League more than the Premier League. And essentially, Premier League would end up being the Carabao Cup, or like it's just going to be some competition people don't care
Yeah.
about over time. So, what do you guys have to say about that?
I still think Premier League will be important, because you still have to qualify to play in the Super League if there's meritocracy. So it'll still be important. It'll still be the same thing, at least in my opinion. I don't know. What do you have to say, Sid?
I think I don't know. That's something that I'm against. They have to clarify how the role of
Yeah.
the local leagues will be important. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
As long as you're replacing Champions League, that's fine. But do not look to replace the main leagues. As long as that progression, that qualification is important from the local leagues, that's what people want to see. Then you have something to fight for long term. Of course, the Super Cup will be exciting, but the Premier League has to be. I don't know if you guys know this, but all of the owners after last year they withdrew from Super Cup and everything. They were all called in and they had to sign a PL agreement, like from the Premier League office, saying that they cannot form a breakaway league at all.
Yeah.
It's part of the agreement every single owner in the league has signed. I don't know if the Glazers have signed that. They probably haven't.
No, everyone
But
has
like
signed it. Everyone has signed it.
every
Yeah.
single team has signed that, so it's hard for them to pull out. So even how that works out, we don't know. But the Premier League will always be prioritized. And if you think about it, the Premier League is low key the Super League now. You have teams spending
Exactly.
£600 million in 2 windows, and then you have a club like Barcelona that are 1 billion in debt. It's insane. You have Juventus that have like been hiking prices and faking prices. We always said Morata is a scam. There's no way Morata is being not being used for money laundering. He is being used for money laundering, and now we can see it.
And I
So
mean,
Well,
it's
Barca have
these
gotten
things
to a
that
point where they're selling grass. Like, come on.
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's so many clubs, like you said at the start, Ankur. All of them are now envious of the Premier League and envious of all of these big clubs. But it's happened in the Premier League where what we are afraid of happening in the Super League, where you have only 6 teams or 7 teams that are performing constantly and constantly in the focus. It's happening in the Premier League. You have only the big six that are being
Exactly.
talked about. Now you have the competition when teams are not performing. But then long term, we're always thinking of the big six. No one's thinking of Brentford after 10 years. So
Fair,
yeah,
fair.
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think to summarize on what we've mainly discussed today. One is, if the fans are ever going to accept this, there has to be much more clarity from
Yeah.
the organizers, the proposers of the Super League, in terms of the role of the domestic leagues. What do they mean by how international is football going to get, and are there going to be future changes to the structure of the leagues? That's one. And the second one is that it's honestly in the hands of the Premier League. If the Premier League teams come together and decide that, look, we're not budging from our current stance, then the Super League is dead, and there's no way something like that could ever gain momentum
Yeah.
initially. So those are the two main points here. But to wrap up, do you guys have anything to add?
No, man, just watch the other videos. We got new series coming in. The Shield brings on the FPL stuff. We're bringing winners and losers every week, and yeah, man, just watch the content, share it, man. Sid, what do you have to say, man?
I think what I have to say is the Super League needs more revisions. I think maybe 2 or 3 years later, it's perfect, but it has to replace the UCL, or the UCL has to improve. There's a new format coming from next year or the year after that. We don't know. We'll have to see. But I think I'm all in for like more money. I'm all in for more football. I'm all in for more competitive games. But do not replace the Premier League and do not take it away from the fans that are there. The fans are the most important thing. Without the fans, there's no players, there's no managers, there's no club, nothing. It's all for the fans. So they're number one. More than money, fans are important. So yeah, I think
Perfect.
hopefully in the future we can go to Super League game together. But for now, Footy Mates is the place to be.
Well put together. Anyways,
Yeah.
thank you so much for tuning, everyone. Do let us know if you like these sort of longer debate type videos. I think it's something we're experimenting with and would love to have more deeper analyses and better quality videos over time. But make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And it's been the Footy Mates today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.